So where do you see technology going in healthcare, being that you're at the forefront? I am here today with my good friend, Bryan Jonas, the owner of DEXAFIT and Prefusion Health. Thank you for joining me. So we're going to be discussing mental and physical health and technology, particularly trying to see where they interconnect.
After college, it became harder to stay physically fit. So I always saw this struggle to be healthy. It was like, how do I find a way to measure body composition? Stumbled onto DEXA, saw it wasn't in New York, brought it to New York.
How does that compare to the way things were done to where technology is today?
I think a lot of people can reach their goals quicker if they trust it.
Have you found that people who otherwise would quote unquote be healthy have blind spots then?
Oh yeah.
This episode of Candid Minds with Dr. T and Friends is brought to you by Mindful Care. Welcome back to another episode of Candid Minds with Dr. T and Friends. I am here today with my good friend, Bryan Jonas, the owner of DEXAFIT and Prefusion Health. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be here.
So we're going to be discussing mental and physical health and technology, particularly trying to see where they interconnect and where the future is and why it is so meaningful and impactful. I appreciate you being here today and joining me in this conversation. I think a lot has changed in the way we understand both mental and physical health. Technology plays a significant role in that. DEXAFIT is at the forefront of incorporating technology into the way we appreciate our well-being. But before we get into the things you're doing at DEXAFIT, I'd love to hear a little bit of background for our listeners about you and your journey and how you got into healthcare and technology.
Sure, yeah. So my background, growing up, I was always active. I was always, busy in sports. I played soccer, basketball, my whole life. I played in college, soccer, and then after college, it became harder to stay physically fit. You start working, that becomes the priority. By the time Friday hits, you want to go out. You want to, have a weekend to just have time to yourself because you're new in the working world. And so I always saw this struggle to be healthy. And I don't want to say I let it go, but, I didn't feel like I was as fit as I was, when I was, in college, and my priorities were having fun and playing sports all the time. I think as my career progressed and I got more into, away from health, which I was always passionate about, and more into business, I didn't like that direction it was going in. I didn't feel like I was happy, just kind of grinding and not really self-care. And I, took a time out at one point in my life and said, what do I really want to do? And I just stopped everything. And at the time I was in real estate, I took everything I had in terms of equity in real estate and pushed it all into the fitness world. I actually went into as a CrossFit gym owner. Okay. I did CrossFit.
Which CrossFit gym did you own?
I owned a gym called Peak 180. Originally it was called CrossFit Peak Dynamics.
Where is that?
In Syosset.
I used to own CrossFit West Hempstead.
Okay, small world, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a very...
I closed it because of COVID. When did you close Peak 180?
So I opened it in 2016. So basically...
I opened 2018.
So in 2016, I started training in 2015, 2014 maybe, and I never physically saw myself develop muscle. I was very active as a runner, but I never could put on lean tissue, and being able to ramp it up to zone 4, zone 5, but still build muscle. I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world. This. I found, something I'm so passionate about. And what happens with me is I take that passion, I'm like, everybody needs to have it. So I'm going to open a CrossFit gym. And not realizing it meant, oh, wait, I got to open the door at 5 a.m. and I got to close the door at 9 p.m.
Wait, Peak 180?
Yeah, it's called Peak 180. I changed the name. I pretty much coached every class for the first year because I'm very,
hands-on,
very controlling of the product. I wanted to make sure it had it was developed a certain way. Plus, CrossFit, as you know, had a stigma attached to it about injury.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to watch everybody. I can't just dump it to a coach and, someone's going to get hurt. So eventually I brought on staff, finally, good staff. We were peaking towards COVID. We were like, oh my God, we're going to hit this many members. Finally, I could step away. And, everything was looking great in COVID.
Yep.
And it was like, hang on for dear life. But while I owned the gym, I wanted to measure body composition. And I was looking for a tool that was, not calipers, not hydrostatic weighing. That's how I stumbled onto DEXA. So I was like,
you didn't like the in-body?
I wanted something, accurate. Okay. So I did my due diligence. In-body, works, but it's not a DEXA.
Right.
So I was like, how do I find a way to measure body composition? Stumbled onto DEXA, saw it wasn't in New York, brought it to New York, brought it into Syosset, so it was close enough that I could run both businesses. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was running DEXA and running the gym, and COVID hit, both shut down during COVID. And coming out of COVID, I kind of lost my passion for CrossFit and got more into, more balanced training than just like, strength and then AMRAP. And I found myself kind of growing away from the model. And I'm like, I can't own something that,
Yeah.
You can't be a CrossFit owner, and it's very difficult to own a CrossFit gym.
No, but even the Metcons all the time are exhausting. If you're not in the mood to do one, like you're kind of.
I just felt my passion was I was losing it. You know? And so at that point, I shifted. I sold the gym, shifted all my focus into DEXAFIT and would eventually be Prefusion Health, and started to know that like you do all this testing. There's got to be a what's next, because these people get this piece of paper, and I'd see them in the parking lot being like, just standing there with the paper. And I'm like, this person they need guidance, they need help. And that was really the evolution of Prefusion. It's supposed to be like a solution-oriented component after the testing. But
so tell me, I mean, I'm a customer, so I know a lot about you guys. But for our listeners, tell us a little bit about what DEXAFIT does, what Prefusion Health does.
Sure. So DEXAFIT is more or less just 3 major tests. They're just tests that we provide. It starts with the DEXA scan, so it's a body composition scan. It's an X-ray, so it has more accuracy than an in-body. It has a 3-compartment model, so it's measuring body fat, muscle mass, bone density, and it's highly accurate. I've done DEXAs. I did a DEXA in Belmore on like a Friday night. I had to go into the city the next day. The machine in the city, I needed to jump on it because there was an error. And so I did a scan in the city. We don't recommend doing back-to-back, but like they were decimals apart. So it just validated the accuracy of it. Like you can go on an in-body on a Monday, you can go on a Tuesday, and it looks like you gained 2 pounds of muscle. Mm-hmm. So the volatility is just, it could throw you, it can make you change your training, 15 times in a week. So, I know it's accurate. The DEXA is one of the things we offer. The RMR is important because how are you going to know, how to change your body composition if you don't know what your metabolic demand is? And that's important because a lot of people might have a higher metabolism than predicted or normal or slow. And then a VO2 max, which became, I was probably doing, 2 VO2 maxes a week in Syosset, maybe even 5 a month, if that. And now I'm like, every week I'm doing like 10, 12 VO2 max tests. So that's become huge because of all these like big advocates of health that are on podcasts saying VO2 max gold standard of
longevity.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
So, we do those 3 tests, and then the idea of Prefusion was really like, if you feel like you're working your ass off and you're not seeing results, we need to take a look, kind of under the hood and see, what's thyroid health look like, what's your blood sugar regulation look like, what's your hormones look like, and are those real roadblocks, or do we have a clear path and we just need a better, protocol? So it's the opportunity to see all the data of performance metrics with internal health that drive those, and create a better, visual for people.
And who are you having run Prefusion Health?
So I have we have a medical doctor who's in internal health, but really focuses on longevity. So his name's Dr. Desai. He basically spent most of his career in emergency health and internal health, and he's, over the last 4 or 5 years, made a push into longevity. He sort of brings that longevity focus merged with me, kind of more performance-driven. And the practitioners that come in, they have different kind of backgrounds and understanding of those things themselves. Looking at internal health from a body composition standpoint is very different because everybody thinks of blood work as like, is everything good? But it's like, well, is everything good and set up for you to lose fat and gain muscle?
Right.
So it's a different, it's a different lens that everybody's kind of
almost like one is
into.
optimizing and then versus just being
and
good.
like what might be prohibiting fat loss. You don't really have, if this isn't here, just because it's in range, if it's not here, it could be, part of the reason we're challenged to lose fat or challenged to gain muscle or have an energy, lull in the beginning of the day, because your cortisol shows X, so it's looking at those things as like the solution to be able to finally hit those goals. But like that's always like a teeter-totter. Like it'll be like this and like that and like this.
Yeah. No, and the two together is really powerful. How do you see that technology has changed this for you? I mean, it's clearly you have to be very data-driven to implement all these things and have a positive impact.
Yeah.
But how does that compare to the way things were done to where technology is today?
I think a lot of people can reach their goals quicker if they trust it. I think there's a trust element to technology. A lot of people see things on social media and then they want to apply it to themselves. But now that you have technology, you can, you could see it works for you or it doesn't work for you versus guessing. You come in and you're like, I want to do, I'm going to drop carbs and push fat, in my diet. I'm going to do more cardio. And it's like, okay,
But they're kind of guessing.
Yeah, I don't know if those are going to be the right thing or the wrong thing for you, but I look forward to seeing you come back to see if it worked. So the data is a way to see if the protocol works.
Right.
Right? I mean, what's the point of doing something if you don't know the outcome worked or didn't work? And measuring body fat and muscle are, important metrics to understand because that's how your weight is. You want to know if your weight's shifting in the right direction. Or if it's staying the same, then it didn't work. Unless you're happy where you're at, which is also good. So I think it's a matter of, if you're driven to optimize and feel your best so you could be your best for your family and, in your career, then it's good to get these metrics and create that outcome.
Have you found that people who otherwise would, quote unquote, be healthy have blind spots then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because, for me, like I think I'm pretty healthy. I train every day. I try to eat pretty healthy. I just did my DEXA scan and my visceral fat went up 0.5 pound, and I'm like, I didn't do anything different. I'm just massively stressed. Like this time of year is just like super stressed. Kids are sick all the time. Business, changes in business. So I'm like, wow, I say stress to people in the room, but here it is, like literally this is concerning, So I'm like, obviously, there's always something to work on. So, if I didn't do that test, I wouldn't take a hard look at myself and say, you know what, maybe I got to manage the stress because if this thing goes over 1 pound, now I'm in the territory where I always tell people you want to be under 1 pound. I'm in that territory. So, if you don't have those metrics, you don't know.
No, for sure. But how do you translate, let's say you have the technology, you have the data. Some people just have lifestyles that are negatively impacting their health. And all the technology in the world and all the data in the world sometimes doesn't change that. How have you been navigating that with people?
Yeah, I mean, those are tough scenarios. Like when you have somebody come in where it's like there's a lifestyle component. I don't know if you're talking about like a data point that would show lifestyle impacting them, like a high visceral fat number.
Sure.
Or like if they did lab work, like a pre-diabetic.
High A1C levels.
Most of the people that come to our facility are wanting change. It is tough sometimes when people come in and they see these numbers and they don't seem like they're driven for change, especially with the blood work. But then it's like, well, what are you doing here? You know, like, don't you know, what's your why, I guess, really? I mean, this is like your territory. This is a psychological component. Like, you know, what is going to make you finally, you know, really take hold of this? Because you can, you know, you're not stuck here. So I don't know. I guess it's like when you see those situations, you want to hope that there's something.
Yeah, I mean, if you're throwing the question back at me, the answer I could tell you is that in addiction and substance use, where we expect the greatest amount of change from the individual, we engage in what's called motivational interviewing, where you effectively mirror back to the person the consequences of not changing, and you don't try to force them to change, and you do what's called rolling with resistance, which means if they don't want to change, you get on their team and accept the non-changing. And if you do that long enough over a couple of sessions, they will, on their own, want to change.
Right.
So you continue mirroring back the consequences of not changing. And if during the session they tell you, well, this isn't for me, I never wanted to quit anyway, I'm very happy where I'm at, you actually reinforce that and be like, you know what, quitting really isn't for you because you're happy where you're at and I'm with you. We're just going to continue talking about this.
Right.
And you stop pushing. When you stop pushing, they come forward. And then that's kind of the...
Yeah, because they're taking ownership.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, it's overly simplified, but that's what we try to do. If someone can make it to a session with an addiction psychiatrist, which is a win in and of itself, the fact that you showed up and you can admit that you have a problem or an issue or a substance use disorder, that's a win in and of itself. So we kind of take our small wins and then take it from there. So that's usually it's usually what we do.
You know, it's hard because when we meet with clients on the DEXAFIT side, it's like you have 10 minutes to kind of help them. You know, because I want people to leave with something, right? I don't want them to like leave being like, I got this data. Like I want to try to give them something, even if it's like a 20-minute encounter and they only bought like a DEXA scan. I still want them to have a good experience. So it's a big mountain to climb when you get that kind of feedback, like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, but on the prefusion side, the biggest piece we don't have is that psychological component because we don't offer it. We have accountability coaching, which is like someone like myself checking in with you, but we don't have the skills to really help you psychologically because ultimately that's what it is. Like you're getting up and getting out of bed every day is something up here. You know, it's like, what is it that's getting you out of bed? What box are you checking? Or like you know, structuring your meal plans a little bit better, or like not having X amount of drinks on the weekend and limiting that, you know?
So if you're juggling a lot, let's say with friends and family and work, and you want to now prioritize your health, even listening to this, it might feel like a lot. Come get a DEXA scan, meet with a functional medicine expert. It could be overwhelming. Is there anything that you would recommend to people as like the minimum you could do if like you're interested but aren't ready to kind of dive headfirst into all of this?
From what we offer? Yeah, so I mean, I think, like I said, you know, if I met with somebody and they did a DEXA scan and I just see them like just can't really comprehend, almost just stuck on the body fat number, not even the muscle mass number, usually I try to say, you know, hey, you know, why don't we choose 3 things, you know, that I know are, these 3 things are definitely going to change your scan and they're doable. I'm like, walk 4 times a week, you know, for 40 minutes or 30, 40 minutes, just walk, you know, at a decent pace. I'm like, get like 1 or 2 strength days in. And this is someone who's like, you know, foundational. And I'm like, just track, like get a general sense of how much protein you're eating. Like I try to choose 3 things that I know if they do on a pretty repetitive basis for like 3 months, it should create some change in the DEXA. So then, you know, if you can get them back for the DEXA doing those 3 things within like an 85 to 90% compliancy, they see change. Now you have a chance to layer on like another thing. You know, it's like, okay, you're doing 2 strength days, let's add a 3rd. Okay, you're doing, you know, 3 or 4 steady state cardios. What about, let's like throw in like 1 interval day, or like come to Belmore, let's do an interval day together because that shit sucks. You know, so that's the hope. And every now and then we see someone come back and they like did a few things and you're like, oh, this is awesome. You know, everything is moving this way now. So, you know, that's you hope to give them you hope to take the DEXA and make it not about the DEXA, but about like, okay, let's implement some small change.
Positive change.
Yeah. And the DEXA is just a way to measure it.
Is there anything that people are overcomplicating? Like, what if they're listening to this and feel like, whoa, this is intense and this is a lot?
Yeah.
Do you hear that people are maybe making things more confusing than they really should be?
You know, I think the GLP-1s are challenging because people, you know, if you don't go into it with like a really good, you know, framework, you could be set up to lose a lot of lean mass, and then it's hard to kind of pivot out of that, especially if the weight loss is like a 1-to-1 ratio. So those are tough scenarios where it's like, you know, we wanted something, but the DEXA kind of revealed it didn't give us the outcome. I think people come in. I think people are getting smarter. So I'm not hearing as much like, okay, that seems like a lot. You know, it seems like you're pulling on a lot of levers.
Yeah, they're more educated too.
Yeah, they're coming in. It seems like, you know, less variables being applied. You know, the less you apply, the easier it is to measure the outcome. So they're not like, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm like, whoa, it's a lot. You know, so the dialogue's getting better, for sure.
Are you in favor of GLP-1s?
I am, as long as like you get those good foundational elements going in. So it's like, all right, I gotta consume, you know, I gotta aim to consume X amount of protein. I'm gonna fuel up before workouts because you can't work out like on an empty
Fasting.
tank.
Yeah,
it's hard. I'm gonna have after, like, there's still an opportunity after to maintain muscle with good post-workout nutrition. Generally, like those people are really like steadfast in those ways, so they usually come in successfully, and they kind of know like, okay, I'm gonna get to the end of this path, which is going to be coming off the GLP-1. And those are the people I see coming in because they're being sent from their practitioners, or, you know, someone who's really advocating for them is sending them.
Have you seen the negative side of GLP-1s?
Not as much, but occasionally, yes. And, you know, you could just see them like being like, you know, I should have done this, or I should have done that.
Yeah, because I've had patients who, on the scale, they've dropped tens and tens of pounds.
Yeah.
But they've also completely atrophied.
Yeah, the commercials say like 14 pounds of body weight. It doesn't say 14 pounds of fat tissue.
Right.
Or whatever it says.
Exactly.
I'm like,
exactly.
Yes. You know, so I think practitioners that are advocating for some form of measurement is good. For the GLP-1s. Yeah.
Where do you see technology going in healthcare, being that you're at the forefront?
I mean, they're doing like genetic testing on medications. They're doing genetic testing, leveraging genetic testing more often. Peptides have become huge, and so we try to, you know, advocate for peptides with data analytics behind it, blood work, DEXA, even VO2 for certain peptides. Sleep, a lot of sleep data now, like. We're talking to a lot of sleep companies about different things you could do for your sleep. Like I was just sent these earbuds from Oslo Sleep that I'm trying out to measure.
Has that been helping?
I'm 3 days in. I'm having a hard time with them because I sleep on my side, and it's like
pushing in.
Yeah. So I'm still trying to get a feel for it, but
a lot of peptides help with sleep, though.
Yeah. Yes, peptides help with sleep. There's some peptides we don't even dispense that are apparently good for sleep that I like to look into. But yeah, I mean, I think the sleep analytics are a big thing. I think, you know, these wearables are incredible. I like them a lot, but only because I'm so like into data at this point.
Yeah, except it could be like data overload.
It's data overload for sure.
Like sometimes you have more information and now you don't know what to do with. We see this in the hospital too. That sometimes you order labs, now the lab comes abnormal. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
You almost regret, knowing.
So like to kind of backtrack, those are the tough clients that when they come in and they're so analytical, like, okay, this is where analytics don't meet practicality. So when we were talking earlier, and I was like, I look at my sleep stuff in the beginning of the day. Like if it says my sleep sucks, like it doesn't change my day. It just makes me want to, do a better job the next day of getting into bed and getting
Sleep
a better
hygiene.
recovery. Yeah. Just I need to, put my work down at 9 o'clock so I can, unwind,
Shut
not
down,
9:30.
dial it back.
Because So it's just like it's just awareness of like, okay, got to do better today. You know,
Nice.
that's how I use it.
So what excites you most about the future of DEXAFIT and Prefusion Health?
I think it's right now we have so much data on lab work, VO2 max, and DEXA, and RMRs. So we're going to be spending time creating linkages between all these tests so we can come up with better protocols because there's so much connection. So we have people that went through what we call a biological analysis, which is a DEXA, RMR, VO2, blood work right away, and then their outcomes to see, what are the commonalities between these 4 tests that will drive results, and what are the commonalities that are also causing, stubborn fat, higher visceral fat levels, lower testosterone levels, IGF-1 levels, thyroid function when it comes to like RMRs, VO2 maxes. So, I think it's like we have all this data now. Let's see if we could take it to the next level in understanding it. So it's not just like, all right, we got a lower body fat. What's your RMR? Okay, we got to eat this much. What's your VO2? Okay, we got to do this kind of training, like even more calculated or at least more specific for better outcomes.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think what you guys are doing is you're at the front lines of the future of health in terms of being preventative, right, and being ahead of the curve, and especially in the fitness world, really helping people who have goals and are kind of guessing and checking. And with social media, it's probably even worse, right? You have all this like bro science out there where everyone's doing all these things that are not founded in real science and real data.
Right.
So being able to clean that up is impressive. So, you guys are certainly doing good work there. I enjoyed learning about DEXAFIT and the work that you guys are doing. I wish you guys the best of luck. I appreciate you joining me today. You're obviously welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
You'll see me at DEXAFIT.
So you're due.
I am due. I am due. So I appreciate it. It was great having you, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.